The smell hit them first. 20,000 rotting bodies don't just hurt your eyes. They made tough Ottoman soldiers vomit instantly. Sultan Mehmed, conqueror of Constantinople, found a forest of humans impaled on wooden stakes, some still moving after days of agony. In the center, on the tallest stake, General Hamza Pasha. What transforms an 11-year-old boy into a monster who terrorizes empires? The smell hit them first. 20,000 rotting bodies don't just hurt your eyes. They attack every sense. They made tough Ottoman soldiers throw up right where they stood. Sultan Mehmed II was the man who took over Constantinople itself. As he rode toward the Wallachian capital, he thought he would find a city getting ready for war. Instead, he found something that would stay in his nightmares forever. He saw a forest, but it wasn't made of trees. It was made of human beings stuck on wooden stakes. Their bodies were rotting at different stages. Some were still moving after days of pain. In the center, on the tallest stake, wearing fancy robes, was Hamza Pasha. He was Mehmed's own general. In the next few minutes, you're going to learn the most scary truth about the real Dracula. You'll see proof that old writers tried to hide about a man so mean and creative with torture that tough conquerors ran away when they saw his work. But here's what makes this even more scary. This wasn't made-up stories. This wasn't fiction. This was a real man who learned that the human body can stay alive on a stake for 3 whole days if you're careful enough. I'm about to tell you exactly how he learned this skill, and why a childhood in chains created the most terrifying ruler in European history. Winter 1431, Sigisawara, Transylvania. In a stone house marked with a dragon symbol, a woman screams as she gives birth. The baby that comes into the world will one day make 20,000 people scream much worse. They name him Vlad after his father. But history will know him by the thing he did best: impale human beings. His father, Vlad II, was in the Order of the Dragon. This was a Christian military group that defended Europe from Ottoman attacks. The word for dragon in Romanian is Dracul. His son would be called Dracula, meaning son of the dragon, but that's not the name that would make people scared across 2 continents. No, that name would come from his favorite way of killing people. Think about the world this child was born into. The Ottoman Empire was growing westward like a disease. Christian kingdoms fell one by one. Constantinople, the beautiful center of the Byzantine Empire that had lasted over 1,000 years, was about to fall. Between the Muslim Ottoman Empire and Christian Europe was Wallachia. This small area served as a bloody barrier. This is where young Vlad learned his first lessons about power. It comes from fear. And fear comes from pain. But to understand how a prince became a monster, we need to see the moment his childhood ended. What happened to an 11-year-old boy in an Ottoman fortress explains everything that came after. Sultan Murad II called Vlad Dracul for a meeting about peace, but it was a trap, but Dracul had no choice. He brought his 2 youngest sons, 11-year-old Vlad and 7-year-old Radu. The moment they crossed into Ottoman land, they were arrested. The Sultan offered Dracul a deal. Leave your sons as prisoners to make sure you stay loyal, or watch them die in front of you. What would you choose, your freedom or your children? Dracul chose freedom. He rode away, leaving his sons in Ottoman hands. Vlad watched his father's shape disappear in the distance. It was the last moment of his childhood. The Ottoman court said they treated noble prisoners well. They taught languages, thinking, and war tactics. For Radu, Vlad's beautiful younger brother, this was true. Radu did well. He became a Muslim. He became the Sultan's favorite. Some whispered he became more than that, but Vlad refused to give in. He spit at his Turkish teachers. He wouldn't learn the Quran. He attacked other prisoners who said bad things about Christianity, and for fighting back he paid. The Turks had ways to break stubborn children. They beat the bottom of feet until they split open. They hung kids upside down while guards hit their bodies with sticks. They used hunger, loneliness, and darkness. But here's the detail historians don't want you to know. During his time as prisoner, Vlad was forced to watch something that would shape his future: Ottoman executions, especially impalements. The Turks used it for special enemies, those who deserved not just death but days of public pain. Young Vlad watched as prisoners were forced to sit on oiled stakes. Their own body weight slowly pushed the wood through their insides. He saw how the stake must be dull, not sharp, to avoid hitting important organs too quickly. He learned that if you angle it right, the stake travels alongside the backbone. It comes out through the shoulder or mouth, keeping the victim alive for days. He was 12 years old, watching people die slowly, remembering every detail. Meanwhile, back in Wallachia, everything fell apart. His father played all sides. Christians, Ottomans, Hungarians. He tried to keep his throne. It didn't work. In 1447, Wallachian nobles working with Hungarian leader John Hunyadi attacked Vlad Dracul in the swamps near Baltini. They chopped him to pieces, but they saved something special for Vlad's older brother, Mircea. The nobles captured Mircea alive. First, they blinded him with hot irons. Then, while he was still screaming and still alive, they buried him. The man who should have protected Vlad died, choking on dirt, clawing at the earth above him. When word reached the Ottoman court, 16-year-old Vlad got the news with strange calm. His captors expected tears or anger. Instead, he simply asked, "How long did my brother take to die underground?" The Ottomans didn't realize they were looking at a creature they had created. 6 years of torture hadn't broken Vlad. They had changed him. Every beating, every shame, every forced watching of impalement had been teaching him not how to give up, how to hurt others. The Ottomans decided Vlad might be useful. They let him go with a small army to claim his father's throne. His first time ruling lasted 2 months before he was driven out. But those 2 months showed us what was coming. Even then, 17-year-old Vlad showed unusual cruelty. A merchant complained about stealing. Vlad had the suspect's feet skinned and salt rubbed into the raw flesh. But this was just practice. The real horror was still growing. For 8 years, Vlad served in different armies, learning the art of war. He fought alongside the man who killed his father, John Hunyadi. Because revenge could wait, but knowledge could not. He studied fort building, horse fighting, and fear warfare. Most importantly, he built a group of supporters who shared his hatred of both Ottomans and tricky nobles. Vlad's moment came. With Hungarian help, he invaded Wallachia again. The current ruler, Vladislav II, met him in single combat. According to legend, Vlad didn't just kill him. He cut off his head, slowly sawing through the neck while Vladislav still lived. Now here's where the story turns from violent to truly monstrous. Easter Sunday, 1457. Vlad invited hundreds of noble families to a feast at his palace. These were the people who betrayed his father, who buried his brother alive. They came dressed in their best clothes, thinking the new prince wanted peace. The feast was wonderful. Wine flowed, music played. Then Vlad stood and asked a simple question. How many princes have you seen rule Wallachia in your lifetime? The nobles, drunk on wine and honest, gave different answers. Some said 5, others 20. A few old nobles admitted to serving 30 different princes. Each answer was a confession. They had lived by switching sides, by betraying every ruler when it helped them. Vlad nodded thoughtfully. Then he gave a signal. Soldiers burst through every door. In minutes, hundreds of nobles were chained. Vlad ordered the old and sick impaled on the spot, in the courtyard where they could be seen from the feast hall. The screaming began right away. But for the young and strong, he had different plans. Still in their party clothes, they marched north to a broken castle. For months, they were forced to rebuild Poenari Castle, stone by stone. They worked until their fine clothes rotted off their bodies, then worked naked. When they fell down, they were impaled. This was just the beginning. If you're finding these hidden historical horrors as disturbing as I did, hit that subscribe button. I uncover the dark truths about history every week. And trust me, Vlad's story gets so much worse. Now let me tell you about the incident that gave him his scary nickname. 1459, Brasov. This Saxon merchant city had been hiding Vlad's enemies and rival claimants to the throne. Vlad sent a warning. The city ignored it. So Vlad brought 20,000 soldiers and showed them what happens when you ignore the dragon's son. He didn't just attack the city, he turned it into a gallery of horror. The Black Church gets its name from the fires Vlad set, but fire was kind compared to what else he did. Men, women, children, all impaled in neat rows. Babies impaled on the same stake as their mothers, positioned at the breast as if nursing. Pregnant women with stakes driven through their wombs. But here's the part that separates Vlad from ordinary tyrants. He had a table set up in the middle of this forest of dying humans. Servants brought him a full meal, roasted meat, fresh bread, wine. Vlad sat and ate while surrounded by thousands of people in different states of dying. The moaning, the screaming, the begging. It was dinner music to him. One of his nobles couldn't handle it. The man covered his nose against the smell of blood and waste. Vlad noticed. "Does it stink to you?" he asked pleasantly. The noble admitted it did. Vlad had him impaled on a stake twice as high as the others. "You'll be above the smell up there," he explained. Old writers recorded something else about this meal, something so disturbing that most historians skip over it. According to both German and Russian sources, Vlad dipped his bread in the blood pooling beneath the stakes. He developed a taste for it. Blood-soaked bread became his favorite meal during mass executions. The numbers alone are shocking. Conservative guesses put Vlad's death toll at 40,000. Others say 80,000. But in an area with only 500,000 people, he may have killed 20% of his own population. That's more than Stalin or Pol Pot when you compare the numbers. But unlike those dictators, Vlad didn't give the job to others. He personally watched. He came up with new ideas. You see, basic impalement wasn't enough for Vlad. He developed different ways. Stakes through the mouth for liars, through the skull for thieves, driven in slowly with hammers so the victim lived longer. Women who cheated on their husbands had stakes driven through their private parts, coming out through their mouths. He impaled people upside down, sideways in patterns that spelled out messages. Two things happened that pushed Vlad from cruel ruler to complete monster. First, he remarries. We don't know his first wife's name, but we know he had to secure his family line. Second, Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II demands tribute. Not just gold, 500 boys for the Janissary Corps, children to be turned into Muslims and trained as soldiers. Vlad's response, he sends the Sultan a message, "Come and get them yourself." When Ottoman messengers arrived to collect the tribute, they refused to remove their turbans in Vlad's presence, citing religious custom. Vlad congratulates them on their devotion. Then he has their turbans nailed to their skulls with 3-inch iron spikes. They're sent back to Constantinople still alive, still wearing their holy headgear, now permanently attached. The Sultan sends an army led by Hamza Pasha. Vlad ambushes them at night, capturing thousands. Every single prisoner is impaled, but for Hamza Pasha, Vlad prepares something special. The general is castrated first, his private parts stuffed in his mouth, then he's impaled on a gold-covered stake. Because even in torture, rank must be respected. This brings us to 1462, and the event that would cement Vlad's reputation forever. Sultan Mehmed II, called the Conqueror after taking Constantinople, personally leads an army of 150,000 men into Wallachia. Some sources say 300,000. Vlad has maybe 30,000, including old men and boys. He can't win a direct battle, so he doesn't fight directly. As the Ottoman army moves forward, they find a wasteland. Vlad has burned every field, poisoned every well, emptied every village. The Turks march through ash in silence. But that's not the worst part. Vlad sends diseased prostitutes into the Ottoman camps. Men infected with plague sneak into their ranks. The mighty Ottoman army begins dying before any battle starts. June 17th, 1462, the night attack. With a small force of his best cavalry, Vlad sneaks into the Ottoman camp under cover of darkness. The goal? Kill Mehmed in his tent and end the invasion with one stroke. Vlad personally leads the charge, cutting through guards, searching for the Sultan's tent. But in the darkness and chaos, they hit the wrong tent. Instead of Mehmed, they find the Grand Vizier. The assassination fails. Vlad and his men barely escape as the entire Ottoman camp mobilizes. The next day, Mehmed continues toward Targoviste, Vlad's capital. The gates are open, no defenders on the walls. The Sultan suspects a trap, advances carefully. Then they see it. Before I describe the most horrific scene in military history, you need to understand the scale. For miles around the city, covering 7 acres, stand wooden stakes, 20,000 of them, and on each stake a human being in different stages of death and decay, men, women, children, Turks captured in previous battles, Bulgarian Muslims who supported the Ottomans, Wallachian traitors, some have been dead for weeks, their bodies black with rot, crows picking at exposed flesh, others impaled, more recently still move, still moan. The geometry is deliberate. The stakes are arranged in circles like a grotesque garden. The tallest stakes in the center hold the highest-ranking victims. Hamza Pasha's gold stake glints in the middle. His body long dead, but still wearing ceremonial armor. The smell makes hardened soldiers vomit. The sight makes them weep. These are men who've conquered cities, who've seen Byzantine Constantinople fall. But this is beyond warfare. This is madness given form. The Sultan, Mehmed the Conqueror, the man who ended the 1,000-year Byzantine Empire, looks at this forest of the dead and speaks the words that will echo through history. I cannot take the land of a man who does such things. What can one do against such a demon? He turns his army around. The man who never retreated retreats. But here's the truly disturbing part. Vlad considers this his masterpiece. While Mehmed flees, Vlad walks among the stakes like an artist in his gallery. He adjusts bodies that have slipped. He notes which angles of impalement last longest. This isn't just war tactics using fear, this is pleasure. One captured Turkish record, often left out of cleaned-up histories, says that Vlad would visit the impalement fields at night alone. He would sit among the dying and listen to their moans like music. He would touch the stakes to feel the vibrations of struggling bodies. He would bring wine and toast the dying. This is who Vlad really was, not a patriot defending Christianity, not a harsh but necessary ruler, but a man who found joy in human suffering extended to its absolute limit. The Ottomans leave, but they leave behind Vlad's brother Radu with troops. Remember beautiful Radu, the one who did well in Ottoman captivity? He offers Wallachians a choice. Support him and live in peace, or stick with the impaling madman. It's not a hard choice. Vlad's own nobles abandon him. His army melts away. By August 1462, he's fleeing to Hungary seeking help from King Matthias Corvinus. But Matthias has been talking with the Ottomans. When Vlad arrives, he's arrested and imprisoned. For 12 years, he rots in Hungarian captivity. But even in prison, the sickness remains. Guards report finding dead rats carefully impaled on splinters in Vlad's cell. Small birds skewered on sharpened quills. He creates tiny impalement fields with insects pinned to pieces of wood. When asked why, he simply says he doesn't want to lose his skill. Think about that. 12 years in a cell, and his main concern is keeping up his technique for torturing living things. The guards are so disturbed they stop bringing him anything that could be sharpened. Politics shift. Hungary needs allies against the Ottomans again. Vlad is released, even given a Hungarian noble bride. He converts to Catholicism, a political move, and receives troops to reclaim Wallachia. His third reign begins in 1476. He's older now, in his 40s, but the cruelty hasn't aged. If anything, imprisonment has made it worse. The impalements resume immediately, but now he adds mental torture. He forces families to watch each other being impaled in order. Children first, then mothers, then fathers. He develops a method of impaling that keeps victims alive for up to a week. One story from this period is so grotesque that even writers of that time hesitated to record it. A group of Turkish prisoners are brought before Vlad. He has them impaled in a specific pattern. Shorter stakes in front, taller behind, creating an amphitheater of agony. In the center, he has a pregnant woman impaled vertically. As she dies over hours, she gives birth on the stake. The baby, of course, dies immediately. Vlad watches the entire process, taking notes on how long each stage takes. This is not warfare. This is not even madness. This is evil so pure it defies understanding. December 1476. Vlad is marching with a small force when he's ambushed by Ottoman troops. The details vary. Some say he was assassinated by his own men, tired of serving a monster. Others say the Turks overwhelmed him. What we know is this. Vlad the Impaler dies in battle, his head cut from his body. The Turks take his head to Constantinople, where Sultan Mehmed II has it displayed on a stake above the city gates. There's poetry in that. The Impaler finally impaled, if only in death. His body is supposedly buried at Snagov Monastery, but when archaeologists opened his supposed tomb in 1931, they found it empty. Some say monks, horrified by burying such evil, moved the body. Others whispered darker theories, but Vlad's death doesn't end his story. You might think I'm about to talk about Bram Stoker and vampire legends. I'm not, because the real horror of Vlad's legacy isn't fiction, it's fact. In Romania today, Vlad is considered a national hero. Yes, you heard that correctly. The man who murdered 80,000 people, who dined on blood-soaked bread while watching children die on stakes, who impaled babies to their mothers' breasts. This man has statues. His face is on tourist merchandise. Romanian nationalists praise him as a defender of Christianity, a bulwark against Islamic invasion. They focus on his resistance to the Ottomans and ignore the screaming forests of the dead. They celebrate his harsh justice. He supposedly made Wallachia so safe that a golden cup could be left at a public fountain without being stolen. They don't mention that safety came from terror so absolute that people were afraid to breathe wrong. This is the real horror. Not that monsters exist, but that we rehabilitate them. That we find ways to excuse the inexcusable because the monster was on our side. Vlad didn't impale 20,000 Turks because he was defending Christianity. He impaled them because he enjoyed it. He impaled Christians too. He impaled anyone who gave him an excuse, and when he ran out of excuses, he made them up. Medieval rulers were brutal by necessity, but Vlad was brutal by choice, by preference, by pleasure. Other rulers of his time used execution as a tool. Vlad used it as entertainment. Other rulers killed enemies. Vlad killed randomly. Merchants who looked at him wrong, women who cooked meals he didn't like, children who cried too loud. He once impaled a group of foreign ambassadors for being too well dressed, saying their finery insulted Wallachian simplicity. The German tales speak of Vlad encountering a peasant with a torn shirt. He asks if the man has a wife. Yes, the peasant says Vlad has the wife impaled for not properly caring for her husband's clothing. Then he gives the man a new wife with a warning. Keep your husband better dressed or join your predecessor. This wasn't justice. This was a man so damaged by childhood trauma, so twisted by years of watching Ottoman cruelty that he became worse than his tormentors. The Ottomans impaled enemies. Vlad impaled everyone. The Ottomans used torture for information and punishment. Vlad used it for pleasure. Modern psychologists studying historical records classify Vlad as a sadistic psychopath with probable sexual dysfunction. Many of his specific impalement methods targeted sexual organs. They note his childhood trauma, his forced observation of torture, his powerlessness as a hostage. Classic serial killer development. Except this serial killer had an army and a country, but perhaps the most chilling detail comes from those who knew him personally. They describe a man who was cultured, intelligent, even charming when he chose. He spoke multiple languages, wrote poetry, understood theology and philosophy. He wasn't a mindless brute, he was worse. A brilliant mind that chose to use its gifts for creating the most exquisite suffering possible. Russian chronicles describe foreign merchants visiting Vlad's court. He treats them well, shows them hospitality. Then, as they're leaving, he mentions casually that he had their servants impaled while they dined just to see if they'd notice. They didn't. He laughs and lets them discover the bodies on their way out. This is what true evil looks like. Not raving madness, but calm, calculated cruelty delivered with a smile. In his final letter, written days before his death, Vlad complains that his Hungarian allies don't let him impale as freely as he'd like, even facing a massive Ottoman invasion. His main concern is that he can't torture enough people. That's who Vlad really was, a man so addicted to human suffering that limiting his torture quota was worse than military defeat. When that Turkish sword finally took his head, it wasn't killing a defender of Christendom. It was exterminating a rabid animal that happened to wear a crown. The real Dracula didn't fear crosses or sunlight. He didn't drain blood with fangs. He did something worse. He proved that with enough childhood trauma and unchecked pure, a human being can become more monstrous than any myth. He showed us that the worst horrors don't come from supernatural creatures, but from damaged humans given the opportunity to spread their damage. 20,000 corpses rotting on stakes. Babies dying on their mother's breasts. Children forced to watch parents impaled in order. Pregnant women giving birth while dying on poles. This isn't legend. This isn't exaggeration. This is history recorded by multiple sources from multiple nations, all painting the same picture of evil incarnate. But here's the final, most disturbing truth about Vlad the Impaler. He won. His terror tactics worked. The Ottomans hesitated to invade Wallachia for years after his death. His name became a curse that Turkish mothers used to frighten children. Behave or Kazakli Voivoda will get you. The Impaler Prince. A man so terrible that even conquering armies turned back rather than face what he might do. And somewhere in that blood-soaked ground of Wallachia, in the earth that absorbed the bodily fluids of 80,000 impaled victims, something dark took root, not vampirism. Reality doesn't need supernatural embellishment, but the idea that ultimate cruelty equals ultimate power. That fear is stronger than any army. That a single twisted individual can make empires retreat through sheer willingness to do what others won't. Vlad the Impaler didn't just kill people. He killed the idea that humans have limits to their cruelty. He proved that with enough trauma and power, anyone can become a devil. And he proved that sometimes devils win. The forest of corpses outside Targoviste wasn't just a war crime. It was a mission statement. It said, "This is what a human being is capable of. This is what I am capable of, and I enjoy it." Mehmed the Conqueror, who had seen cities burn and empires fall, looked at that forest and saw something that conquering couldn't something that winning couldn't cure. He saw the face of human evil, stripped of all pretense, all justification, all humanity, and he ran. We should all run from men like Vlad, but instead we put their faces on coins and call them heroes. We focus on their victories and ignore their victims. We pretend their ends justified their means. They didn't. They never do. And until we stop making heroes of monsters, we'll keep creating more Vlads. More forests of the impaled, more proof that the real Dracula doesn't need fangs, just power and a damaged soul. Vlad III died in winter 1476, his head decorating a Turkish spike, but his legacy lives forever. That humans can surpass any fictional monster in cruelty. Every dictator who uses terror, every killer who finds pleasure in pain, every damaged child who grows up to damage others, they're all children of Vlad the Impaler. The man who made hell on earth and called it justice.